Hi, welcome to our public health presentation over China. My name is Jacqueline. I'm a second year MPH student here in epidemiology. I want to go ahead and thank everyone here for showing up, and also I want to apologize beforehand if this seems a little bit too rushed or not as informative, because we are trying to condense a 2-week event-filled experience into only 45-minute presentation. So mainly for this presentation, we're just listing off all the places and events we did, and just to give you an overview of what the itinerary was like. But we'll have plenty of time in the end for all the questions, as well as provide you with a link for more information about our experience, as well as all the blogs on there. So I'll go ahead and get started. A little bit about the course. It's a long 2-week experience in China, where during the first week we were able to observe and take in how the public health system in China functions in comparison to the United States. And then during the second week, it was more of a cultural learning experience and understanding present-day China through its history and traditions. Our host institute for the first week in China was the School of Public Health in the Nanjing Medical University. Here we attended multiple lectures given by faculty members from the university over the history and culture of China, as well as a general overview of the medical school and its main components. For example, in one of the lectures, Dr. Feng discussed China's current interest and main focus economically, which was switching from oil to natural gas. This would introduce the fracking method for natural gas extraction, which utilizes a mixture of water, sand, and certain toxic chemicals. The companies responsible for the job resisted disclosure on what exactly this fracking cocktail contains, but former studies have shown that the waste produced from fracking contains many hazardous environmental toxins. This obviously is a huge concern for public health organizations in the near future. And that same day, after a brief introduction and discussion with the medical students, we took the school shuttle over to the Nanjing campus, where we actually toured the actual School of Public Health and their 5 departments of epidemiology, toxicology, nutrition and food, maternal child health, and social medicine and health education. You can, again, you can get more information about the university on our webpage. We'll provide that at the end of the presentation. So switching over to a more cultural experience, on the first day, or more of the second day, we visited or toured in Nanjing was the Sun Yat-sen Museum. This place was packed with people visiting or paying respect to Dr. Sun Yat-sen, because he is known as the founding father of the Republic of China, where he devoted his entire life overthrowing the, Qin dynasty? Qin dynasty. But before that, there was the Ming dynasty shown here on the right. This is the largest imperial tomb in China, where the first emperor of the Ming dynasty rests. And continuing on, this is the Nanjing City Wall, probably one of China's most ancient pieces of architecture. It's over 600 years old, and the wall stretches over 22 miles, and it originally served to protect the city, but now it's more of a tourist attraction since there's only 13 miles of the wall left. But what was interesting about this wall was that each individual bricks were inscribed with the names of officials who were responsible for the quality and construction of the wall. So to this day, you can probably count up to roughly 350 million bricks, all inscribed with a name. And then ending our first tour, we took a fairly relaxing boat ride on the largest river in Nanjing. It's about 68 miles in length, but we only toured a small portion of the river, which had small shows for tourist entertainment and decorative building that lit up at night. And then lastly, Confucius Temple. It was built to commemorate Confucius, a pretty well-known Chinese philosopher. Confucianism is still one of the 3 main religious groups heavily practiced in China still. And then I'm going to pass this on to Stephanie.
Greetings, everybody. If you guys didn't hear me, I'm also a second-year epidemiology student at the School of Public Health. So following the tour of the Nanjing Medical University School of Public Health, the school invited us for informative lectures about their program, as well as an overview of the health circumstances in China. On behalf of their School of Public Health, we were very fortunate to have the Associate Dean, Dr. Shah, to present on the functionality of the school. Students of their school are offered 7 concentrations. In addition, students have the ability to facilitate the research aspect of their program with 3 of the school's research centers. The school is highly recognized for their research work with advanced technology in the field of toxicology evaluation, ranking their department among the top 1% of essential science indicators. We were also very fortunate to have a presentation by a professor of their school, Dr. Ching Feng, of the Department of Nutrition and Food Safety. Her primary interest is in cancer prevention research through understanding the molecular mechanisms of cancer development and progression, roles of dietary health. More specifically, her research is in studying dietary phytochemicals and disease prevention. Phytochemicals are biologically active chemical components found in plants, and these are not to be confused with nutrients. For example, she has worked with cell cultures and animal models to identify the combination effect of the phytochemical EGCG found in green tea and curcumin in lung cancer. What was interesting from these lectures were I found some key differences that I noted. For example, in Dr. Shah's presentation about the school, although the Nanjing Medical University's Public Health School offers 7 different concentrations, the school does not offer departments that pertain to health policy or health administration. And I believe that this is because maybe the institution has been grounded within a medical university, so the school focuses upon the representation of the principles of medicine. And another difference between the school was the ratio of time. Each program emphasizes on academics and research. Although students here spend more time in the classrooms, however, over in China, they spend more time in the research laboratories. So it's kind of the opposite. And also in Dr. Feng's lecture, which was also very interesting, was the differences in medicine used in China compared to Western countries. Dr. Feng had mentioned that the study of phytochemicals has a large impact in traditional Chinese medicine, which focuses on the use of natural foods and herbs to treat health problems. This is very different from the Western world, where we focus more on technology and surgeries. And as China continues to advance in the medical technology and move toward Western medicine, this was very interesting as how the movement of Western medicine would impact or conflict with the traditional Chinese medicine. Following that day, I thought was one of the most eye-opening experiences was our trip to the Nanjing Medical University's affiliated children's hospital. This hospital is comprised of 3 buildings, and it is one of the largest children's hospitals in the province, as seen in the top left photo, or in the top photo. The bottom photo is a group photo shot of us outside the outpatient hospital that was surrounded with loud construction zones and crowds of parents overlooking their sick children. The most shocking part of this image was the number of men that stood next to the sick children smoking a cigarette. So through the doors were more crowds of parents and children waiting in a smoke-filled atmosphere. In the larger photo on the bottom, you can see a congested lobby filled with high volumes of outcoming and incoming patients and long lines for the registration desk. Next to the desk is a large electronic board that lists the number of the order of patients to be seen. In China, the hospitals do not follow an appointment system. Patients do not have the luxury to call the hospital and make an appointment to see a doctor. Instead, patients are seen on a number system. So it's basically a kind of a first come, first serve organization. So therefore, patients see a different doctor every visit, kind of preventing patients to establish a relationship between their doctors. As we move to the different parts of the hospital, we continue to observe the no smoking signs within staircases and hallways, with men smoking underneath these signs, which is very kind of ironic, which is one of the signs, as you can see in the middle photo. The photo on the left is a good representation of how everywhere we moved involved high traffic flows of people and large numbers of people waiting on each floor. And then on the right photo, we were very fortunate to meet and speak with different directors, specialists, and nurses. And this particular photo was with a general medicine nurse on her floor. So based on these tours, there's certain things I also noticed, differences between hospitals in the US and in China. For example, I've learned that privacy in China is almost non-existent, and it was ever more evident in the hospitals. I do, however, commend the Chinese for not being shy. For example, examination rooms not only appear to be open to the rest of the floor, but also appear to be just a room without any sense of space or discretion. So when we walked through these halls, doors were open, and there were just maybe 2 families in one room. So it was just very interesting where we can just be by ourselves with one doctor. And another thing about the smoking, which was very alarming to us, we did ask the nurse why there's no enforcement and why people continue to smoke. She explained that smoking is a cultural entity of China. No matter how much is done to stop smoking, smoking will persist as it is part of their culture, therefore resulting in a lack of enforcement on this issue. And also telling people that they cannot smoke also brings bad business to the hospital. So if the hospital tells someone to leave because he or she cannot smoke, this will discourage them from coming back because they can go to a different hospital that allows them to smoke. Okay, and then on the culture aspect, on our first full day in Shanghai, we got to be tourists and experience part of China's ancient history. A little side note, when we say ancient, this refers to thousands of years of history embedded in China compared to the several hundreds of years in the US. In traveling to the old city parts of Shanghai, our first stop was to the Yuan Mart. Tucked away into this tourist hotspot is an extensive Chinese garden called Yuan Garden. It attracts so many visitors because Yuan means garden of happiness or garden of peace. It was created during the Ming Dynasty by a government officer named Pan Yuduan. The significance behind the garden was to express reverence and love to his parents. In Chinese, Yu means pleasing and satisfying, and the garden was specifically built for parents as a place for them to enjoy a peaceful and happy time when they grow older. The garden consists of 20,000 square meters of rockeries, pavilions, halls, ponds, and glaciers, all with distinctive characters, as you can see. Here's one wall where we just wanted to take a cool picture. This is just one of the many ponds in the garden. In this photo, the larger photo, is a lot of the panels, which is very interesting because in the middle it has an animal and a crane. And then around the animal or the crane has carvings of Chinese characters. So it was very interesting at how intricate these, and how detailed each art piece was. And then lastly, separating each area of the garden were dragon walls designed with undulating gray tilted ridges as the body and ending in a dragon's head, as you can see in this photo. And that was it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norma Mood, and I'm a second-year MPH student in epidemiology and biostatistics. So as Jacqueline and Stephanie mentioned, our trip really focused on observing the healthcare institution in China. So one of the healthcare institutions that we were invited to tour was Jiangsu Province Hospital. And Jiangsu Province Hospital is the largest comprehensive hospital in Jiangsu Province, and it offers services such as medical treatment, teaching opportunities, and research. And it's actually also the first affiliated hospital with Nanjing Medical University, and that's actually the school that hosted us and allowed us to stay in their dorm for a week while we were in Nanjing. Now, considering the hospital's chief role in the province, it's really no surprise that the hospital was inundated with thousands of patients visiting and seeking medical treatment. So we were really appreciative of the opportunity to be able to walk through the hospital and speak to the staff and also interact with some nurses and surgeons. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of the hospital is that it contains one of the best liver transplant centers in the country. Now, the hospital performs a high number of procedures with approximately 50 to 100 liver transplants per year. And we were curious to know the reason for these procedures, and the surgeon let us know that hepatitis B was pretty prevalent among the patients that required liver transplants. Now, during our stay in Nanjing, we were also invited to tour the Nanjing Elementary School, and we got to interact within the school and with the children for a couple of hours that afternoon. And upon our arrival, the school had prepared this lovely marquee for us, just greeting us and welcoming us into their institution. Now, since it was a normal school day, we were able to see how the school operated and also interact with the children and see how they performed their daily activities. So we were really happy to see that the school focused on physical activity and dancing. We constantly saw children moving around, entertaining their minds and bodies, and a few of us actually even joined in on some of the dances within their classrooms. So that was a really enjoyable experience seeing that. Something else we also noted was how they focused on computer classes. So the students performed daily computer exercises where they learned not only about basic computer skills like Word and email, but also programming on software. So I was really impressed by how much time they dedicated in instilling these skills into their students. Now here are just a couple of arts and crafts prepared by the students for their art competitions. So it really allowed us to see how imaginative these students were and how talented they are. And after our tour of the school, we were brought into the school assembly room, and we were surprised by all these students dressed in dancing attire, and they had prepared 7 wonderful performances for us. So they all got up on stage and performed these dances and acted out skits in English. And after the performance, we actually went up with the students and taught them how to do the head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So they were able to reiterate that back to their students, and we really engaged and interacted with the student body at the school. So that afternoon was really enjoyable, I think, for all of us, getting to interact with the students. And here are just a couple of pictures of Toysi and I with the students before we left. And I think all of us really enjoyed that experience very much so. And actually, the picture to the left over here is a couple of students performing the Gangnam Style dance. So we really enjoyed that. Now, on our second week of the trip, we actually got to travel to Shanghai. And on our first visit in the city, we went to the Buddhist temple. Now, while this is a tourist attraction for many, we observed many individuals visiting for religious and pious reasons. So we saw several individuals praying to the Buddha structures. And also, if you see on the bottom left over here, we came across a couple of monks performing their daily activities within the temple. And one of the most interesting features within the temple is actually these 2 jade Buddha structures that were brought over to China from Burma in the 1800s. And this top picture over here is actually a replica of the jade Buddha, since we're not allowed to take pictures for preservation purposes. But they're really beautifully carved, ornate pieces that are very sacred to the Chinese individuals. And after visiting the garden and the temple, we retired to a tea shop, and we had a hostess prepare us some concoctions and just herbal tea, so we were able to enjoy that for an afternoon. And a couple of us even bought some teas just for gifts and souvenirs. So this first day was a really nice cultural experience and getting to observe the religious practices within China. In our second day of the trip, we actually got to visit the Shanghai World Financial Center, and this is actually a large building within the Pudong district, which is the financial district in Shanghai. And it's a pretty large building that contains retail offices, restaurants, really a tourist attraction. But at the height of the building is this observatory. So we were able to take the elevator up 474 meters, and kind of just appreciate the views and architecture of Shanghai from the height of the building. And an interesting feature of the building is that it contains this transparent glass floor, so when you look down, you're able to see the beautiful city beneath you. And this financial building is really a testament to the modernizing force in Shanghai and how it's becoming and transitioning into this financial capital in China. And I will hand it over to Tiffany.
Thank you. My name is Tiffany Lunt. I am a preventive medicine resident in the College of Medicine, and as part of that training, I just graduated this past summer with an MPH in the Health Policy and Management Department. So In contrast to the hospitals that you've seen that were really busy and chaotic, the community health centers, or the small local centers, were almost completely empty. And so I was fortunate to take this picture on the right where there's one patient. Now contrast that to the pictures you've seen before with hundreds of people in line. And like the United States, there is some dichotomy in either perceived or real quality between rural and urban health centers. And so historically, community health centers have not been frequented if the patients have the funds to be able to go to the tertiary care hospitals that have been discussed previously. In the healthcare reforms of 2009, the Chinese government has made several strides to try to increase both the quality, perceived and real quality, as well as the affordability, and some other initiatives to try to increase utilization of the community health centers, both rural as well as community in the large metropolitan areas. And so they subsidize some of the healthcare. Costs for services are set by the government, but they do receive a discount if they go to a community health center rather than a large hospital. And so, as we learned visiting several of these community health centers, patients do frequent these if they are looking for something that's not as busy. They can get in faster. It's a little bit more cost effective, and it's certainly less complex to navigate the system. So hopefully that dichotomy between rural and urban healthcare will resolve with the new initiatives. Chinese healthcare is a unique blend of both traditional Chinese medicine as well as Western medicine. Chinese traditional medicine practitioners are also trained in Western medicine, so all traditional medicine providers can also and do also provide what we would consider as regular medicine. On your left, you see a large distillery where they distill large quantities of herbal teas for distribution, which are then dried in a complex process and then distributed in sacks out of a pharmacy, similar to a pill bottle here. There are also individual herbals at all of the pharmacies, so the individual mixtures can be made tailored to individual patient needs. We were also able to see a lot of the other types of traditional Chinese medicine, moxibustion, cupping, massage, acupuncture. And here you see the tools of acupuncture and a couple of the students, including myself, undergoing an acupuncture treatment for firsthand experience. This unique melding of both the traditional Chinese medicine as well as the Western medicine in the same provider actually is seen as a benefit because, as you know, here in the United States, those that seek what we consider alternative treatments may or may not divulge to their providers things that they're taking or treatments they're receiving. And certainly there's no communication system between those providers and the traditional Western medicine providers here in the States. But in the Chinese healthcare system, where it's the same provider providing both, certainly it's much easier to reconcile medications and treatment lists for patient safety. As far as the historical aspects, since the end of the First Opium War in 1842, at that time several countries had a presence in China, specifically Shanghai. They did all come together to form a municipal council, and many of the foreigners tended to gravitate together for their residences, which formed this international settlement. The Bund is part of that international settlement, which was with where their banks were located and their financial district. It's very European and American in architecture and influence, and now is a tourist attraction with high-end retail shops. The French was the only country that didn't join in that international settlement and wanted their own, so there is a separate French concession that we did visit that has very distinct colonial-style French architecture that still exists today.
Hi, my name is Divya Talwar and I'm a second year PhD student. On the public health side, we visited the Nanjing Red Cross Blood Center, and this was the biggest blood center in the Nanjing city. And over here, before we started the tour of the facility, there, Dr. Hong presented her research to the staff and the research members over there, and she explained to us about the blood donation law. So there's a pre-blood donation era and a blood donation era after 1997. In the pre-blood donation era in the 1990s, there was commercial procurement of blood for the blood donation, and this was especially prevalent in the rural areas where poor rural workers used to come and donate their blood even 1 or twice in a week for just a small amount of money. And also during this time, the explosive growth of HIV was taking place because there was no sanitation or hygiene, first of all. The same infected needle from an HIV patient was used in another HIV patient. And the second was that, like, for example, in the plasma phoresis into a donor, when the plasma is taken out, the other part of the blood is taken back into is transfused back into the patient. But this was put in the common blood pool of all the patients, and if one patient was HIV infected, the whole pool was infected with HIV, and from this HIV infected pool, it was transfused back to the original patient. So this urgently increased the HIV rate among the Chinese population, and the government passed 1997 the blood donation law during this time, stopping all the monetary reimbursement for blood donation, making it just altruistic in behavior. And on the right side of the picture is the director of this blood center, and he talked us about a little bit of the comparisons for the US and China. Like he told us that there is about 15% of existing Rh negative blood which is present in the US citizens over here, but in China it's only 0.05%, which is existing in the Chinese population. So as a result, they have to work more harder to procure blood, and students and the army soldiers form the biggest blood donors for these for the Chinese for China. Also, we saw some really cool Jackie Chan public health campaigns, procuring more blood from those people over there just to step up those blood donation campaigns. And they had a very good state-of-the-art machinery all over their center, and the director proudly showed us the window period detection machine, in which it could detect the window period for the HIV patients. Now, window period is a time when a newly infected HIV patient will not be detected by the standard procedures like ELISA and other procedures. So if a person is infected for 14 days, that can be detected only by certain advanced machines, and they had it over in this center. So that was pretty cool for us to see and how they were operating that. And at the first left, the first top left picture, that's Texas A&M being welcomed, and in Chinese, Dr. Hong is being welcomed too because she presented her research over there. On the cultural aspect, we went to the Tiananmen Square, which is the third largest square in the entire world, and it can house about 100,000 people in just one square. And this was the center of the 1989 pro-democratic movement as well. And I was a little fascinated on seeing this because I've admired the Tank Man picture all through my life, and here I was standing and seeing that. Then we went to the Forbidden City, which was right across the Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square borders the Forbidden City from west to east. And the history behind the word Forbidden City is that only the concubines, that is the Chinese word for emperor's wives, and the eunuchs that could be allowed in the city. No man could be allowed in the city if they were not associated with the emperor. And that's why it was just all royalty which was present in the city. Another interesting fact is in the entire campus of the inner and outer chamber, there were no trees which could be planted. Only outside these chambers the trees could be planted. And it's a huge palace, and it's the 5th largest palace indeed in the world, and it's a UNESCO certified heritage site. And if anybody knows the movie The Last Emperor, that was based on this palace, because Puyi, the last emperor, was driven out from this palace itself, and he was just 8 years old from the Qing dynasty when he was driven out. Then we went to a local tour of the Hutong city, which is a touristy spot. Here we also spotted some Tex-Mex dining places on the place on the way over here. And the left side picture, it seems to be rickshaws, at least in my country. And I miss these eco-friendly transport over here a lot, because they are quite cheap, and they'll take just a couple of dollars for here to HEB perhaps for me. But I miss them a lot over here. But they took us over there in the Hutong city, and we had a nice opportunity, because the rickshaw drivers, they were pretty entertaining for us, and they explained the whole city in a very comedy-like fashion for us. And then we had dinner, the lunch with the local family. It's in the right picture, the left, the right top picture. And over here, we had one of the amazing foods during the entire China trip. It was really awesome. And first we were a little bit skeptical, but when we tasted it, we all just ate all what was it. And this was government certified, and it regulated. So there was quality check performed by the government. So it was a really nice part of the journey to experience the local and the local cultural family over there. While going back, we saw the Hutong city, and there were a lot of parks which were around there. And along in these parks, there were the Chinese traditional exercise not machines, but architecture, which could be used for exercising over there. And they were a lot rampant in the entire China. So Chinese people exercise a lot, and they drink hot teas just before and after. So they have a different kind of lifestyle and diet, which is contributing to their longevity in this part of Asia.
Hello everyone, my name is Toyosi Oloyeye. I am a second year health promotion and community health science major. And I will introduce this picture. For some reason, people just kept handing me their babies to take pictures with. Perhaps they knew that I was interested in maternal and child health, so we'll just go with that being the reason. Okay, so one of the more somber experiences that we had was the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Hall. And the history behind this experience that we had was, as we went to Nanjing, we had no idea, well, I had no idea that this city was stained by massacre, by a really great tragedy. And what happened was in the winter of 1937, the Japanese invaded China. This happened in a phase of about 3. First, they invaded the mainland China, and then they started to migrate towards or travel towards Nanjing. At the time, it was called Nanking. It's one of the 4 ancient cities of China. So they captured the city, and once they captured the city, the soldiers began to massacre about 300,000 individuals, women, men, and children. And it was a really somber experience, but it was really great to know that although they had this horrible experience, they had this memorial hall to commemorate those who were lost, and also share the facts of what happened so that, history didn't repeat itself. And upon entering the memorial hall, we were confronted by a lot of statues. If you can see them on the bottom, the statues embodied a few of the massacre stories from survivors. Some being a grandmother holding her deceased grandchild, some an infant clenching onto the cold teat of their mother. And it was just really horrifying, but I think it's very important to share these experiences. Also, there were a number of stories, and once we went into the memorial hall, we were unable to take pictures. So what we did was we walked through the halls, through the corridors, and it chronologically explained the progression of the invasion. And if you can see here, the number of individuals who were accounted for does not include those who were injured, those who were raped. Many women were raped, and that number doesn't even consider those atrocities. In the upper picture is a statue of a woman, and this is pretty much a statue commemorating those who were raped. The number of women and girls who were raped were an extremely large number. Before we were able to experience the Nanjing Memorial Massacre, we went to the BenQ International Medical Center. And this, just like the community health centers, was extraordinarily empty compared to the public health center. So this is a privately owned hospital. And one thing that we did notice about China was that the majority of the hospitals were publicly owned. This was a private hospital. It's owned by BenQ Corporation. They are a Taiwanese electronics company, and they have recently entered the arena of healthcare. And this is the second hospital that they own. The first is in Taiwan, and this hospital was very state-of-the-art, so we were very surprised that it wasn't being utilized. So our tour guide explained to us that in China they trust the public hospitals more because they've been around longer. This hospital is roughly a year or two old, so a lot of people didn't utilize this hospital, although it was completely state-of-the-art, because they didn't trust it. They didn't have enough guanxi, which is clout or reputation in the community, to trust their lives at these hospitals. Another thing that we noticed as we traveled through the hospital was that BenQ had a very elaborate Chinese traditional medicine center. And we noticed that all the hospitals did incorporate that traditional medicine aspect, and this was a really great facility that they had there. They also had a really large cardiothoracic unit. They had the traditional units that most hospitals have: maternal, labor and delivery, dermatology, inpatient, and emergency. And as you can see on the upper picture, this is the emergency room. And one of the things that the tour guide told us was that a lot of the emergency cases that they had was injury related. So one of the things that we were informed before we went to China is that it's an extraordinarily developing country. So we were given a figure that one skyscraper is built every 30 seconds in China. And that just seems absurd, but as we went to China, we saw that it just looked like one big construction site. A lot of the cities, a lot of buildings were being erected. So the emergency room was experiencing a lot of falls from the construction workers, a lot of major injuries, and we actually witnessed a patient coming in for that very reason. This was actually my favorite cultural experience. I was looking forward to it the whole time. I was teeming with excitement as we drove up to the entrance of the Badaling side of the Great Wall of China. And the Great Wall was erected as a protective military protection against invasions, and it's about 5,000 kilometers, and that's about 3,100 miles long. And before we went, they told us that the side of the Great Wall that we were going to trek up was very steep. And I even felt like that warning did not do the fact of how steep that side was any justice. We all got into a bus, and we traveled in Beijing from our hotel to the entrance of the Great Wall of China. And it took us about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to the Great Wall. And we were so excited. As we were driving up, the road started to wind and twist more and more. We knew we were getting closer to the mountains, and the mountains were covered with green trees, as you can see. And we finally got to the front, the entrance, and we put our foot on that first step. We all even took a picture, and we began to climb and climb and climb. And I don't know, I had expectations for the wall to be relatively level and flat, but I felt like I climbed a mountain, like a real mountain. And it took us about an hour to get to the very top. And when we first started, that's a picture of us before we climbed. We all look happy, we're not sweating. You know, I have a cardigan on, the wind is blowing in Nicole's hair, she just looks fabulous. And when we came down, we took no pictures because we worked up a really, really good sweat. We burned thousands of calories, I'm sure. And it was a really awesome experience. As we were climbing up, we noticed that the stairs had different levels to them. There was no unified or uniformed height to the stairs. So some stairs felt like, a little, but some stairs felt like a foot tall. So we really worked our quads out. And as we were climbing up, I would occasionally glance back and see how far I'd gotten. And the view just kept getting better and better and better and better. And finally, we got to the top. At one point, I told everyone that, just leave me here, go on without me. I can't make it. But I'm really glad that that we all made it to the top. And as we were climbing down, the climb down was just as difficult as the climb up because it was extraordinarily nerve-wracking to step down these varied sizes of stairs. So it was equally as challenging, but we all made it, obviously, and we all had a really great time. We mentally checked off, one of our bucket list items, and it was a really, really great experience. This is more pictures of us posing. At this point, the cardigan is off. It was really hot. It was actually a really great day. We were told that we were lucky about how windy and cool it was that day, so at least we had Mother Nature on our side. And this is us before we climbed. And here's Nicole.
Hello, my name is Nicole Lewis, and I'm an epidemiology major of MPH in my second year. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Wuxi CDC. So on our last day of public health learning, we were able to visit the Wuxi CDC, which is a CDC in Jiangsu province. And the first thing we were able to see in the CDC when walking in is they led us to the Vector Museum. So in the Vector Museum, they had bugs, rats, small mammals, basically anything that they could fit in the building and case they had in the Vector Museum. Along with all the displays, they also had information on control of diseases. So that was very interesting. After the Vector Museum, we were actually given a tour of the CDC. So the CDC is a pretty large building for being in Jiangsu, just Jiangsu Province CDC. We were able to tour the labs, and while touring the labs, we were able to see tests going on. And the test they were doing that day is water test. So they were testing a few water facilities, seeing what they had in them, which was really cool being there. After our tour, we were led to a room where they gave us a presentation on the CDC. And so there's over 4,000 CDCs in China, very different from here, that monitor 1,951 health issues. Jiangsu Province CDC serves a population of 6.6 million people. So in the CDC, they monitor disease prevention and control, emergency public health, publishing epidemiology reports, interference and control of health hazards, lab evaluation and inspection, health education and promotion, and laboratory research, which is all under the Wuxi CDC. One of the last days in China, which we were all exhausted at this point, was the Royal Summer Palace. The Royal Summer Palace has actually, it's a really old place, but it has been rebuilt in the 1900s. Here we have where we were able to see a lot of Chinese culture here. On the right side, you see Divya painting. Right here, there's an old man who goes around painting Chinese characters, telling a story about the past, and Divya wanted to interact with him and drew us a nice picture. On the left, we have some traditional Chinese music. So in a pavilion They have a band and old traditional music being played for all the tourists to see. The place also had many long corridors. This one was beautifully painted, and it was at the bottom of Longevity Hill. And we were able to walk through. After the Royal Summer Palace, we were able to see the bird's nest and the water cube, where the 2008 Olympics were held. They now aren't being used for much but tourism, so most of the facility's upkeep comes from ticket sales and things like that. And, we would all just like to thank everybody who's helped us along the way, whether it being funding or just helping us with all of our connections, Dr. Hong especially, and SRPH. The HSE also, we are all able to apply for scholarships through that, Dr. Burdine and John Zamor, and Dr. Zhang, Austin, Eric, Jessica, Fan, and Mancy from the university, from Nanjing Medical University, which is also where I did my practicum. So if anybody has any questions about that, they can ask me or any students who'd like to do a practicum in China. And our tour guides, Field, Ellen, and Jack. And now I think we're going to go to questions. I know we're really late on time.
Question? Yes. Someone showed a private hospital. Was the reason the private hospital was empty because it required private money versus state money to enter there?
Actually, the BenQ Corporation is it's a extraordinarily, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking, was it the issue of funding that the hospital was empty? The hospital is actually properly funded. It's funded by the BenQ Corporation. They're an electronics company. And when we went to the hospital, it was about halfway built. But the part that was built in its entirety, and it was ready for usage. But the tour guide informed us that the reason why it wasn't as full as the public hospitals was because the community, it was fairly new, and the community really lauded reputation, and they were unable to prove, other than with time, that they were up to par and their facilities were up to par. And also, a lot of the community, was a developing community that was surrounding it. A lot of the community didn't really know that they were there yet. So they had a lot of marketing, a lot of community outreach to do as well.